First of all, thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. This is a SystemActive and HP webinar on the new products by HP, the HP Workforce Experience platform, and also a bit of a generic discovery into the sort of topic of digital experience. We are co-hosting today as SystemActive, and really we're not here to kind of sell ourselves. We are on a mission to provide real value to our customers with education on new platforms and new changes in the market, and HP WXP is a perfect example. We're very lucky to have Ross on the call with us today, who is technical software services specialist with a great understanding of WXP, who's going to run us through the platform. And with that, I will hand over to Ross to take us forward.
Cool. That's fun. Thanks, Dom. Hello, everybody. So by way of introduction, my name is Ross Riley. I'm part of the software services team at HP. So looking after a lot of our software products from a kind of customer perspective. So sort of speaking to customers such as yourself and sort of showcasing what we have and kind of expanding out on that portfolio. And one of those is WXP, as well as our Wolf security stack as well, which is becoming a lot more mature as well. So what my kind of plan was to kind of run through some slides onto, I guess, the kind of background context as to why we've developed this platform and kind of what we're doing kind of going forward in terms of roadmap, but also take you into our sandbox environment and actually show you what the platform looks like, as a lot of our corporate slides are quite bloated with slideware. So I'm more conscious of actually showing it to you as opposed to sort of going through the kind of theories around it. But just to kind of set a bit of context in here, we run every couple of years what is called the Work Relationship Index at HP. So this is where we survey customers, employees globally, not just internally within HP, but across our sort of enterprise and mid-market space. And we kind of gather feedback from all of those users and then build out this kind of survey. And the latest one, which came out a couple of weeks ago, found that 72% of workers don't have a healthy relationship with work, and a lot of that is really down to the kind of technology they use on a day-to-day, more around the devices that they have for their particular workflows, for their day-to-day needs. Employees just don't feel that they're kind of being listened to, or they don't feel the device they have are suitable for their kind of day-to-day needs. And also, conversely, when they do have issues with devices, a lot of people kind of suffer in silence and just kind of get on with it and feel that it's kind of par and parcel of the kind of day-to-day life. But obviously, this kind of causes a kind of bit of despondence with organizations they work for. They don't feel that the kind of needs are being listened to. And even kind of internally here at HP, we had a lot of issues with Teams on Monday where just nothing seemed to work. And I myself didn't raise the ticket to IT, but I imagine that internally, hopefully with us in HP utilizing WXP, they could see that there was an issue happening right across the organization with Microsoft Teams, and they were actually looking to resolve that as quickly as possible. So, and also on top of that, that kind of ongoing issue with service desk of I have a problem with my device, it takes hours and not days to get that resolved, just kind of creates that sort of despondence. But also, it's not necessarily the organization's fault. There's compounding pressures all the time around centralizing platforms where you have different security solutions and other kind of platform portals to just manage your estate, from just laptops, then mobile phones as well, or even other devices that don't sit within that kind of Windows estate. So they don't necessarily talk to each other. So there's this constant sort of pressure for organizations to have this in a kind of single pane of glass fashion to make it as easy as possible, but also that kind of growing IT cost as well. So obviously the kind of news in the market at the moment is component shortages, increasing price on RAM and graphics cards. Organizations on this constant pressure to ensure that what device they have are suitable to potentially stretch to further down the line. And then that kind of fragmented and delayed insights from tools that are kind of out there, things like Intune and Intune Analytics are fine, but they don't kind of give you sort of granular detail that organizations and teams want to kind of find the root cause as to what problems are potentially happening across the organization. And then obviously it's kind of ever evolving sort of cyber threat, and we saw that kind of over the past 12 months with the likes of Harrods and M&S kind of being breached, and obviously it's a constant sort of worry and concern. So it's all these kind of other factors just don't really help with that, and sort of joining up that whole sort of employee engagement and sort of device side of things as well. And the kind of learnings from Ghana from the past couple of years is they're sort of seeing this sort of shift between the sort of reactive approach from organizations to tying in a more proactive approach, but also bringing in that sort of user experience and what we're calling DEX, and so digital employee experience. So this is really kind of where we've kind of moved to now with HP, and bringing that kind of DEX tool into the market. So to give a bit of kind of background context, we developed a product called Tech Pulse, or Proactive Insights, about 7 or 8 years ago. This really gave organizations the ability to look at their fleet, see how it's performing. Is it healthy? Are there areas of those devices that we could look to improve? But it also gave them kind of insights into devices that would potentially go down. So again, being more proactive, providing that kind of insight to show, this battery on this device is going to fail. It gave organizations the kind of foresight to go and get that device warranted or swapped out before it became a down device for that user. But what we found, and certainly over the past few years, is that customers would take proactive insights, they would take Tech Pulse, but then buy the solutions to layer upon top of that. So lean more into Intune, which is obviously happening a lot more nowadays, leaning more into that user sentiment side of things, more kind of topic analysis around the device they had. So they were kind of buying all these different tools, but obviously they weren't necessarily kind of connecting and sort of joining each other. So that's where we kind of take the approach of kind of gauging that feedback from customers and saying, okay, well, if we're going to build out a kind of centralized platform, what would you want to have? So this has really been a kind of an 18-month journey on doing that. And the kind of short and long-term roadmap from a HP perspective is, we know we've got print solutions, we've got poly solutions, they're all sitting there in different SaaS platforms, and the kind of short and long of it is we're going to collapse all those and bring it all into WXP, so that from customer perspective, they'll have kind of everything they kind of need from a fleet management side, and then from a user perspective in a single pane of glass. And this is pretty much what that kind of architectural sort of diagram looks like. Everything is centered around that employee experience, and gauging that user feedback, and then flowing down into a product and a platform that is agnostic. It's not just bringing in telemetry insights from HP devices. We can pull in Dell and Lenovo and other Windows devices as well, and help sort of provide that insight and recommendations around potentially fixing and diagnosing those devices as well. And also right across print, audio and video as well. So this is physical meeting rooms and how they're being utilized, and the telemetry around those, but also the kind of Teams calls that we're on now, but also Zoom and Cisco calls. So are there issues happening across the organization that, again, the organization could look to see where they can improve? And you can see that through sort of application experiences and alerts through the platform as well. And ultimately, the kind of platform is there to sort of ensure that you are secure. So it will expose sort of potential security postures within the organization on endpoint devices, monitoring all of those as well, seeing are they performing well, where could we look to improve them, and then go into that remediation side of things as well. So through that same platform, I'm being told, right, I've got a problem with a set number of devices. What can I do to go and resolve that, and give them that kind of guidance and the tooling to be able to do that as well. And then ultimately, as we kind of move the platform further down the line, is automating those processes as well. So it takes that heavy lifting away from IT teams and organizations that are already under a lot of pressure, and actually automate some of these remediations to those endpoint devices as well. So from a customer base, we're operating globally now. The WXP has been rolled out from a global perspective. We've got nearly 50 million endpoints feeding into our data lake. So when you have a tenancy stood up, how many devices you have in there, they're also providing purely analytics data back into that data lake. So when we're kind of giving recommendations and insights into what we feel you should be looking to do with your devices or providing other sort of elements of analysis, we're really kind of leaning into that really mature data lake. So it's more to kind of reaffirm that although this a fairly new platform for us, this was only released in May last year, the kind of maturity that sits behind this is is extremely vast, and also that data lake is pretty mature as well. So with that, I will then just jump into my sandbox environment and actually kind of take you around it, which will hopefully kind of give you a better idea as to what I'm talking about. So just bear with me a second. So I'll just jump into it now.
Just while Ross is doing that, I'll encourage everyone who's here to drop any questions you have in the chat. As Ross is doing a bit of a general overview, and there's a lot to the platform, if there's anything you want us to come back to or that we can just take note of to follow up on, please drop a comment in the chat.
Cool. Thanks, Dom. Yes, I mean the platform itself is quite vast, so I'll kind of touch upon, I guess, the kind of key things we get asked from customers, or the areas that they see a lot of value from the platform. And also, if you want to kind of set up a separate session to sort of delve into some of these components in a bit further detail or expand, then I'm more than happy to sort of do that. But I hope this kind of give you a bit of an idea as to what you're looking at. So from a platform perspective, whether you've got 50 devices or 5,000 devices, this is pretty much what you would see as an overview. So in terms of getting your devices into the platform, it's an agent-based approach. So you installing that agent via Intune or via SCCM, or doing it manually if you choose to do so. And then over a period of 24, 48 hours, you will start to see that device fully populate the platform. So the agent will talk back sort of 2 or 3 times a day, because provide that analytics, provide those levels of insights. And if there's kind of any areas that are of a higher concern, if it's a potential security risk to that device, or it's potentially going down, then it will flag pretty much straight away. But we are moving towards this kind of real-time telemetry back into the platform. So as you dial into here, this is pretty much will be kind of real time, and that's part of an update we're having from the end of this month. But from this kind of high level here, I can sort of see what my fleet looks like. And just in this particular sandbox environment here, I've got around 81,000 devices in here, and I can see different manufacturers and vendors that I have, and also the kind of split in terms of that compute as well. So just from a quite high level, I can see what my network health across devices looks like, what my security looks like as well. So where our platform differs to, I guess, kind of other peers in this space that have been around for sort of 10, 12, 15 years, is that they kind of really put a lot of data into here. They kind of overwhelm a lot of users and a lot of organizations with, right, here's a data dump, you go and figure out what to do. And I think that's the feedback we've kind of taken from customers that have been using other solutions, in that the data is really good. I'm getting a lot from my devices, but actually kind of getting into the weeds and understanding what the root cause of the problem is and then going to fix it could take a long time. So we've really kind of built upon this approach of, we can provide a lot of insights and telemetry from devices, and you can really kind of dig down as deep as you want to, but actually just providing that high level of, here's a problem, here's how to go and fix it, and then fixing it is the kind of main premise to here. So if I'm looking at this from a kind of overall experience score, green is pretty good, yellow needs a bit of work, and red needs some sort of further looking into. So if I drill down into just this OS performance widget as an example, as I drill through, I'm then given some sort of top issue indicators around what devices are having issues and what is affecting that operating system performance of those devices. That kind of experience over time as well. So again, is this a recurring trend? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? And as I scroll further down just in through this widget here, I can then start to filter by device. So again, I can look at this from are they old devices? Are they kind of newer ones? And see that kind of breakdown into here as well. And then this is where we see a lot of the kind of value from the platform is the kind of alerting side of things. So we've got around 23 pre-configured alerts in the platform. So whether you've got certain number of devices you want to roll in there, if it hits a certain percentage metric on one of these alerts, it will trigger and it will show it to you in the platform, and it will say, right, this has happened. It's happening across a certain percentage of the fleet, certain number of devices, and basically kind of giving you that prompt to go and take a look in a bit further detail. So obviously for this sort of OS performance area, I can look at the sort of full list of recommended actions and start to almost work our way through these and start to look at them in a bit further detail and push out those kind of updates. And then I can start to filter them by categories if I want to sort of look at it from that perspective as well. So if we look at the kind of recommended actions around here, it might be that the OS performance is being affected by secure boot. It is also affecting my kind of security scoring as well, which you saw on that kind of main homepage. So again, I can drill into it in a bit further detail. So I can see, right, I'm being told that I need to, or at least kind of look at enabling Windows Secure Boot across a number of devices, see the number of devices impacting the percentage of that fleet, but also I'm given that kind of guidance around what the cause of that alert is, and obviously every single alert has its own kind of possible causes, and then what the recommended remediation actions I should take. So in this particular case, I might want to actually kind of copy that text, and then as a first pass, again, depending on what the alert could be, I could actually send out a toast notification to just those users. So I can see all these users here, I can see their serial numbers, I can see who the last signed in user of those devices are, and actually send out what we call a pulse. So this is really a kind of a pop-up in the bottom right hand corner of the user's screen. So usually where you might see a new mail that comes in or a Windows update sort of prompt. So it's kind of designed to be not as intrusive, but actually just sort of showing those users, could you just kind of take action upon this? So if I go back to the actions, I might want to say, this has happened, please follow these recommended steps to re-enable secure boot, and then hopefully that kind of kills off that particular alert. But it might be I don't trust those users to do that. I'm not, I don't think they're maybe technically proficient enough, or maybe I just don't trust William to do that because he keeps turning off secure boot, as an example. So this is where I can then start to take action myself and then go to remediation. So this is where we have 25 pre-configured PowerShell scripts in the platform. So these are ones that we've co-signed, we've put into the platform here. They're ready to go. They're ready for you to download as templates, change, re-upload up to the platform into your own library of scripts. So everything's kind of held within the same dashboard. So if I've got my own scripts that I've created, I can utilize those as well. But in this particular scenario, I will leverage HP gallery of scripts to enable Windows Secure Boot. And then it's pretty much a case of selecting that relevant script. And then I can go through to next and then hit remediate, and I'll push down the script to those affected devices. And then when I do push down that PowerShell, it's pretty much instantaneous. So it will deploy onto those devices. And then hopefully as I start to sort of see that dashboard refresh, and when we kind of move to real time as well in the next few weeks, if I've killed off that alert and enabled Windows Secure Boot in those devices, then effectively I'll kill off this kind of red area, or potentially this red yellow area as well. So really from a sort of proactive approach, is sort of just seeing what this kind of overall score looks like and then almost working your way through those actions. So it's really kind of taken away from that service desk of waiting for things to happen, waiting for it to fly up to the service desk, and then potentially influx of tickets. So again, it's improving that user experience, because they might have issues with their device, they just kind of suffer with it, blue screens, I'll reboot my PC and kind of carry on when it boots up. But if I'm starting to see this happen across my organization, people may or may not report it up to service desk, and if they do, it's only going to be the sort of small number of tickets that may sort of alert it. And that is kind of where we can start to look more on the analytics side of things. So again, a lot of our kind of peers in this space have lots of kind of analytics, but it's very much kind of data dumped into the platform. You have to go and create your own reports. You have to connect into Power BI or kind of other sort of toolings like Tableau to visualize all that data. So what we've done in here is actually pre-populate a lot of reports. So there's lots of things you can start to leverage and get more insights into your devices and the organization. So we've got some modern reports in here, and then we've got some classic reports that we've leveraged from our previous software with TechPulse and Proactive Insight. So ones a lot of customers have started to use, and not so much now, but over the past 12 months, is that Windows 11 readiness assessment report. So quite quickly, as long as my devices are enrolled, I can quickly run this report and see, right, what devices are running Windows 11, what are ready to update, what I can update, but those users might have a performance delta on those devices. and then which are going to be kind of not compliant from a Microsoft perspective. So this has been really useful for a lot of customers, and even just from a warranty perspective, just kind of getting sort of a high level overview of what does my fleet look like, whether I've got 200 devices or 2,000, what can I start to look at to replace, and then plan it in a lot better basis of, okay, well, I've got some devices I can look to refresh, some that are kind of within warranty, but I can export that and start to plan a lot easier. So there's a lot of kind of really sort of basic reports in here that I can start to leverage, and then also on the kind of modern report side of things, I can delve a lot more deeper into those devices and actually see it from an application perspective as well. So again, be more proactive, not waiting for things to start to happen across an organization or kind of fly up into service desk. I can see from the fleet I have some locally installed applications, and if I use Outlook as an example, I can see I've got a large number of crashes, large number of freezes that are happening, but also I'm being given the recommendation, so kind of residing on that data lake that we have, and providing you with the insights to say, right, well, based upon all those 48 million devices that are feeding into our data lake, the devices that are having no issues with Outlook, or at least kind of minimal crashes and minimal freezes, that's the version they're running, and that'll work right across all the different applications. So we're not relying on Microsoft, because they probably wouldn't tell us what the recommended version of their applications are. We're basing this on that data lake and those other devices that are running perfectly fine. So this again just kind of helps with providing that level of insights to kind of just from an application level, what is performing well. And obviously for those kind of higher end applications, if you're doing more in the kind of CAD space, it's business imperative to make sure those applications are running as smoothly as possible for those users as well. So there's lots of analytics and reports you can start to leverage within here as well. And then down on a kind of individual basis, I think we're seeing a lot more use case from a service desk side of things. So service desk ticket gets raised. Maybe the ticket doesn't really make sense. The user hasn't really provided as much information as possible to potentially, get to the kind of root cause of what the problem is with that device. So again, I can start to drill down into that device. So as I mentioned, you're kind of feeding up as the platform a couple of times a day. But if I actually, select a device through here, it will kind of force a handshake from that device and just pull up the kind of latest telemetry data back into the platform, and I can see that I'm now sort of effectively connected to that device. And I've got lots of sort of tabs I can start to drill into up here, which I won't do now because they kind of go into a lot of depth into each one, but I can really start to maybe sort of potentially diagnose and get a better idea as to what's happening with that device and potentially diagnose it as well. One of the new features we're bringing into WXP is the ability to do remote connect or in-band remote connectivity. So that kind of over-the-shoulder support. So essentially like TeamViewer or potentially Microsoft RDP as well. So again, I can just come up to here, and then one of the options will be remote connect, and they'll give that prompt to that user to say that someone from my team wants to jump on your machine for diagnosis. They provide that acceptance code, and then again it's just bringing that sort of capability from an IT perspective to do everything from that single pane of glass, having to go off to a separate portal or a separate platform that they may purchase, and actually just do that over the shoulder support. We'll have that ability to do that in here in WXP within the next couple of weeks as well. And then we do also have location data as well. This is usually kind of turned off in the platform from a privacy perspective when it's deployed, but if you want to opt into it, it's pretty much just toggle it in the settings. So this just pulls that Windows location data. So if you've got users that are sort of operating in a hybrid fashion, then you might want to just potentially check and see that they are in the location they should be. So again, from a security and maybe from an asset management side of things as well, we can start to do a lot of those capabilities, and we are starting to connect some of our security products into here as well. Things like Protect and Trace, which gives you ability to remotely lock and erase devices, even if it's not powered on or not connected to any network. So a really popular tool that we're starting to see across all markets. But again, that's one of the first things that we're starting to collapse into here and not have it as a separate portal for you to look after and manage as well. So there's lots of things you can start to take a look at from a device side of things as well. And then pulses. So this is where I mentioned about that kind of employee sentiment side of things, so gauging that user feedback side as well. So we run this in a couple of ways. So the first one is a custom pulse. So this is really a kind of bespoke survey you could push out to all users or a subset of users, or particular offices if that's how you want to filter it. But I do have some kind of pre-configured templates in here as well. So I can notify users about an outage. I can say, look, we've got some scheduled maintenance coming up, and start to flesh that out in a bit further detail. But I could also create something from scratch. So this is where I can start to be more bespoke around gauging feedback. And it might be that we're looking at some new devices, and the options are clamshell, flip, touch, whatever it is I want to be, and have that as some extra additional questions if I wanted to as well. So it could be very sort of bespoke around this, or again just notifying a subset of users about something. So you could be really sort of customized around here. Choose when to start it, when to stop it, and as I mentioned, choosing who the audience is. So mapping it to enter ID groups, we can do that in here as well. All enrolled devices, uploading a CSV file, whatever your preferred route is, or doing it by dynamic filters. So picking a serial number and then obviously starting to choose those particular individuals you want to send out a notification to, and it might be senior leadership, or it might be team leads for each office, for example, that you just want to gauge some feedback initially. So we can do a lot of things in that sort of custom pulse section just within there. And then the other option we have is sentiment pulse. So this is the kind of sentiment at a point in time. So this is what feeds back into that main dashboard. And this is really a kind of pre-configured 3-question pulse survey. As I mentioned, this just appears in the bottom right hand corner of the user screen down here. And put your company logo in there. Just in this environment, we've got the HP logo in here, but it's designed to be sort of as little intrusion for the user as possible. It's not going into their inbox and they have to go off to URL to fill out a survey. It can be kind of quite annoying to do. If this just pops up, they could probably run through these questions in about 10 seconds, and again providing that sort of point in time back to IT to help sort of get a better picture on user sentiment. So first question, 1 to 5 star, they can select that, and then obviously then the second question is multiple choice, so areas that technology impacts them the most, and then the last one is a kind of free form. So this is really kind of helping to gauge a bit more of an understanding as to what are the kind of technical or maybe technology problems that users have. It might be that when they go to the office, there's not enough desks, or there's not enough monitors that have a USB connection, for example. They don't have a docking station, or when they use a HDMI cable in a certain meeting room, it never seems to connect. It's all these kind of nuances that impact users on a day-to-day basis, but it doesn't necessarily warrant them raising a service desk ticket. It's that kind of that suffering silence mentality. So users can run through that, and if I kind of show you what's been pushed out as a kind of test, we can look at our kind of sentiment workplace sentiment survey here. I can see how many I've delivered, who's viewed it, what my kind of response rate looks like. First question, 1 to 5 stars, overall pretty good. Obviously got some areas I need to sort of look and understand. And then the last box, which is that kind of free form, from an IT level, I don't have to go through every single response and find out, right, what's the recurring theme here, what are the kind of main bugbears of users that we could look to address. The platform will extract, analyze, and give you and present to you the kind of key areas that are negative, but also the key areas that are positive. So you can sort of look at this at a snapshot in time, and if I kind of ran this today on the 21st of January, I might see that, right, remote work is a challenge. Why is that? And again, look at that in a bit further detail. I could then run this in a month's time, or maybe in the next quarter, once I've kind of hopefully addressed some of these concerns, and run the same sort of sentiment pulse again, and then see, has this changed, has it improved, has it thrown up some other areas of concern as well. So we've got a lot of customers that are really sort of heavily leaning into this sort of sentiment side of things, because they might think they have an idea on what users want and need, and it's the best device possible, or it's an i7 processor to do their day-to-day work, but actually there could be some sort of things outside of those endpoint devices that are potentially impacting them on a day-to-day basis, and having that kind of level of insight to see, right, what is that user sentiment, what is that user feedback, and then tying it into those kind of true data points you get from devices just give this sort of overall picture and perception of your fleet. And then just lastly, I just want to cover some of the things we're bringing in from a beta perspective. So a lot of these products that we're starting to flow into now have been based on customer feedback. So they're kind of telling us, these are the kind of toolings that we would want to see and would want to utilize on a daily basis to help with kind of managing devices. So one of which is Fleet Explorer, which actually got updated a couple of days ago. So we had a kind of version 1 to this. This is very much our sort of co-pilot ChatGPT tool, but specific to the platform. So I've got analytics up here. I can create my own reports. I can start to filter some data points to get to the root cause of things I want to find out. But it might be I just ask the platform a question and then it'll go away and kind of run that analysis across my tenancy and bring back the answer to the question I've asked. And then the update to this in our version 2 for Fleet Explorer, which is in the platform now, is it'll kind of prompt you with follow-up questions to kind of dig a bit further into that data and dig a bit further into the question you've asked to help sort of provide a bit of a better detail as to understanding of your organization. So this really helps to sort of layer upon top the analytics side. I can also utilize it and use it, but it might be someone else in the business asks me a question, I could go away and find out for you and run some analytics reports, or actually I'll just ask the platform a question in Fleet Explorer and generate that response and copy that text and data and send it over to whoever it is that asked the question. So this has just been updated quite recently, so it's been again a kind of big ask from customers in helping get to grips with data analytics across the organization. And then the last tool we're dropping into here at the moment from a beta perspective is Smart Refresh. So again, we're kind of seeing a lot of organizations refresh devices, but not necessarily know which devices to migrate onto. And I think it's certainly a lot more apparent now with constraints, looking at new devices and potentially seeing the kind of cost implications or the lead time that are coming down from all the vendors. Do we need to refresh these devices? Could we look to move on to different platforms, or maybe look at devices that are potentially less performant as to what they purchased last time? So this is really kind of tailoring around not only looking at how you refresh devices, looking at it from a sort of age perspective. Could we look at it from a sort of utilization factor as well? So you're looking at all these kind of factors into here, but also helping provide guidance around which devices you should migrate onto. So I think with likes of Intel and AMD and Qualcomm to some extent as well, they seem to refresh their processor generations every 6 months, it seems, at the moment. So for most organizations where they go through a 3-4 year refresh cycle, it's really difficult to know what was relevant 3 years ago and what is the kind of comparable device to that now. So this really kind of helps with that. Look, we've got to refresh X number of devices. What should we move on to? So within Smart Refresh, it gives you the ability to effectively upload a catalog of products you're considering into the platform. So you might look at 3 different models, 5 different specs, or 10 different models and specs, for example. And then when you kind of pick and choose which devices you want to refresh, when you run the tool, you can start to map out which devices those users should migrate onto. So it kind of takes away that sort of persona-based approach for refreshes as well. You work in finance, that's the device you have, end of. It really kind of takes into account how each individual user utilizes their device. And I usually have loads of tabs open, I've got spreadsheets open, I've got PowerPoints open. I might use my device completely differently to another colleague in my team, but it might mean that I might need a better performing device. I might need an i7 processor, hopefully. And again, conversely, it's all data back. So when you start to present this back to peers in the business or finance departments within the organization to say we need to move these users onto these new devices, and this is the kind of reasons as to why, you can obviously show that it's around the kind of utilization side of things. And again, going back to that kind of user sentiment side and that digital employee experience, it's giving the right devices for those users to do their day-to-day. So that is Smart Refresh, and the kind of version 2 to this, which will be out I believe in the second half of this year, we'll really kind of lean more into other factors. So things around budgets, looking at, we want to refresh X number of devices, but this is the kind of budgets we need to stick to. So again, the platform will kind of then start to give you some options around, this is what we would recommend from a performance perspective. But, if cost factors are a big issue here, then this is your kind of, best in class in terms of that sort of price bracket as well. And we'll start to kind of add, a lot of new features into our lab section as well. So that's pretty much it as a kind of, I say, high level overview. I still kind of went into some parts of it into detail, but it's more to kind of highlight a lot of the areas that we're seeing a lot of drive and sort of requests from customers around, if we're looking at having a single pane of glass or that same dashboard, these are the kind of things we want to see. And that's where we're really trying to flesh that out. But essentially the whole kind of premise of WXP is, getting to grips with devices, understanding how they're being utilized, where we can look to start to improve those devices, potentially sweat those devices longer as well. If they're out of warranty but they're performing well, then we can obviously start to sweat those devices for a longer time period. But also more importantly is tying in that user sentiment side of things as well, and gauging that user feedback and bringing that part of the same dashboard to give you this sort of overall sort of picture of your entire endpoint estate.
Thank you so much, Ross. Great overview. We've got some questions that have come in, and I'll just run through them in order. Some of them we might have covered, to be fair. So first one from Connor is just, will this be working alongside Intune, and what's the functionality sort of above and beyond Intune?
Yeah, I think most customers that are using this are on that path to Intune. So I wouldn't say this is replacing that. It's very much complementing what Intune can do. So from a kind of update perspective, you can run remediations, you can push down Microsoft updates through Intune. I think where WXP kind of adds more value to that is, we have the ability to see our own driver packs. We can see from a device level what BIOSes those devices are running. So, if we release a new driver update, we release a new firmware update, it's good to go. It's within our soft pack FTML for Microsoft to put that as part of their, updates might take 4 weeks, 6 weeks. So you're kind of in this sort of period of there are updates available for devices, which might improve that sort of experience or performance of that device, but you don't have to wait for Microsoft to rubber stamp it or push it out as part of an Intune update. So certainly where we play a lot better with HP devices is, if we've released an update, it's ready to go within WXP, you can push down those kind of updates. Conversely, we have some customers who are really heavily into Intune, they're more than comfortable with it, they're happy with doing updates and remediation through there. But what they don't get is the kind of the analytics side of things. They can kind of get some of it from Intune, but it's, from feedback we've had, it's very cumbersome. They have to try and connect it into Power BI. It takes a lot of development work. So it's a kind of two-way of, it's very much complementing what Intune does and just kind of enhancing that side of things as well. So it's definitely not there to replace it. We'll probably start to integrate a lot more with what Intune can do over the next few months, I should imagine, as well.
Thanks, Ross. I was just going to expand on that with my own sort of curiosity, really. I understand that there's a level of device health that WXP will give you insights on, such as battery health within the device, potential hardware sort of failures that are not yet happening. So the platform can recognise issues that are coming down the line. Is that a feature of Intune, or is that unique?
With Intune, I'm not so sure. Definitely within WXP, you will get kind of indicators around which devices are not running, battery health manager, for example, which is built into our BIOS. So you can start to sort of optimize some of those sort of toolings to improve that sort of battery life for devices. But there's lots of reports you can start to analyze and extract, but then obviously then sort of taking that next step towards that remediation side as well.
Yeah. All right, brilliant. We'll move on to the next one. I do believe we covered this, but do ask it another way, David, if you feel we haven't. The question was, can you apply fixes or recommendations via the platform, or do you take that away to other platforms? I believe we saw that you can kind of, send out messaging or remediate within the platform.
Yeah, and I mentioned at the start around the kind of automation side as well. So that's something that's coming. So, even if the alerts will appear in the platform, even down to, devices that have a Windows update pending. Most people, and I'm a victim of it as well, is Windows update appears. Yeah, I'm going to push that off. I'm just keep pushing off and pushing it off. But, if you have a large number of users in the organization that, are doing that, and it will alert in the platform to say you've got a number of devices here that have a Windows update pending that haven't been done, you can start to automate that process to either force it upon the user themselves or set up a kind of automated process to send out a pulse. So just send out that kind of toast notification to just those users that it's affected to say, look, you haven't rebooted your PC, it's got some updates, go ahead and do it. So there's lots of kind of toolings around that automation side to, again, sort of as and when alerts appear in the platform, you don't have to start going through every single one. You can start to bat them off into an automation process as well. So again, if you've got a large fleet or it's a thing you don't want to be sort of tied down with on a daily basis, you can start to automate some of these, kind of pulses, but also that remediation side of things as well.
Brilliant. Okay. Moving on, it's another one from David. This sounds like a very specific issue that I think I understand as perhaps users saying that they can't log into things because of Microsoft Authenticate. The actual question is, does Remote Connect allow you to administrate Authenticate?
Yeah, so if you do Remote Connect, you will get full admin rights to that device, so it will elevate you as well. So I think similar to how TeamViewer does it, so you don't have to, you're not kind of restricted at that level. You will kind of be elevated up to an admin rights level as well.
Great, thank you, Ross. Yeah, David's confirmed that's it. Great. Okay, next one from Connor. So the question is, can WXP send out scheduled reports for admins?
Yes, you can. It's one thing I haven't covered actually, but yes, you'll be able to create your own. Let me jump back in just a second. I can show you what that looks like again. So also got lots of pre-populated reports in here. I can also create my own bespoke ones as well. So if there's something more specific I want to find out, then I can create that category, create that subcategory. And if I start to flesh this out, I can then start to schedule those out. So if I want to know, as a blue screen example, how many blue screens occurred every day, every week, I can start to schedule those out to myself, or again, just having a better idea as to what other kind of areas that I want to get insight on and have it kind of scheduled out, or potentially whoever has certain rights to the platform, and you can pick and choose what kind of admin rights users have to this platform. So you might want service desk only having access to analytics and devices, but not have access to labs or anything else. You can start to be a bit more bespoke around that as well.
Thanks, Ross. Still got a few more questions, but I think we've got a bit of time. So the next one, I think, again, we covered it, but just the question is, are there any conflicts with non-HP laptops or hardware, assuming they are running Windows OS? I'm not sure there's conflicts, but there might be slight, almost better functionality on HP.
Yeah, naturally we get kind of better level of insights from HP devices. We can see BIOS versions, driver versions, etc. From a kind of Windows sort of PAN perspective, the analytics side, there's no sort of compromise or differentiators there. But in terms of updates, we've got pre-configured scripts in the platform. A lot of them are very sort of Windows-based scripts, I would say. There's a couple of HP ones. So one being HP Image Assistant, which is more of a sort of push out to that device. Once it's installed, it will go away and download all the kind of updates that are available for it. So that's a kind of option there. But you do have that kind of library of scripts you can upload. So if you go around PowerShell scripts that you leverage for Dell devices, Lenovo devices, then upload them into the platform. You can obviously enroll those kind of other OEMs into WXP as well, and then start to push those updates out. So there's no sort of kind of play off, I guess, but you'll naturally get a lot more deeper in terms of the HP devices just from a kind of BIOS level down insights, I would say.
Thank you, Ross. I'm going to answer the next question was, does it monitor tablets and video conferencing units? I believe the answer is just yes to that one.
Yeah, so tablets it depends on the operating system. Obviously, with Android based, we are fleshing that out. At the moment, it's very much sort of asset management side of things. So we're still working on that kind of Android sort of telemetry side. Same for Mac as well. We're kind of working on that as a kind of roadmap. But if you have a kind of devices in WXP that are assigned to users, you can upload those kind of tablets from a sort of asset management side and then have it mapped to those users. And then on the video and audio conferencing side, yes, it is part of WXP, but as a separate kind of product altogether. So it will collapse into here, but it's a separate product called WXP Collaboration. So it's a separate tooling, but it will provide sort of similar levels of insights that I showed you there around individual sort of calls, how they're performing, but also from physical meeting room side of things as well. But yeah, the premise of that separate tool is we will collapse it into that main dashboard and again have everything in that single pane of glass, but will operate standalone at the moment.
Brilliant, thank you, Ross. I think we're on to the last question, really. So for remediation, does it have the ability to update or reinstall drivers? And then the follow-on is an example. It's picking up that an integrated camera is connected and then unconnected multiple times throughout the day. Does that show, and can one just perform a fix within the platform? Yeah, I think that's it. I've reworded it, but I believe that's it.
Okay, for the kind of peripheral side of things, it won't pick up if something's been connected or disconnected lots of times in the day. I know the teams are working on looking at kind of monitor insights and docking stations as well, because docking stations are becoming more of a kind of management tool as well, and being able to update those through WXP has been a big driver. But yeah, kind of connecting devices and deconnecting is not something that's in the platform at the moment. But was the ability to update, reinstall drivers? Yes, you'll be able to do that. So you kind of create kind of policies in the platform. So you might want to sort of set aside test groups initially, push those updates out, make sure it works, and then if it does take effect, you can start to roll that out across the fleet. So you can kind of set up those kind of policies and groupings in the platform, and then update and reinstall drivers for whatever it is. Thank you.
Also, yeah, I think I'll ask that in a clunky way, but I guess the point is if you can do the update of reinstalling of drivers within the platform, and that doesn't fix the issue, then you probably need to go and physically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we see it as well where you can kind of create a group, you push out an update. Sometimes it takes effect on 5 devices, but it hasn't done on 2 devices, and you can see within that group why it hasn't happened. And sometimes it's just because the user hasn't powered on their device in a few days, or on holiday, or it just hasn't taken effect. So again, you can sort of look at that in a kind of further detail to see why hasn't that happened, what was it a particular reason. So again, it just sort of highlights when you sort of push down that install, has it taken effect, yes or no? And also if it hasn't done, then again you're given more insights as to potentially why that hasn't happened. So you'd have to go away and figure out how to go and do it. It should give you that kind of insight to show why it hasn't, but then again giving you the tools to be able to do it as well.
Brilliant. Okay, we're out of questions for now. I'll just kind of start to wrap up, but with the invitation for anyone who's joined the call today to please reach out for a follow-up. I'm sure, as we said at the start, there's so much to the platform, and it can be utilized in very different ways depending on how your organization is run. So we're very open to having a follow-up call and a follow-up demo with a bit more of a deep dive into your potential use. Lean on us for any questions or sort of support that you might want with this. We're more than happy to, run through this in depth and sort of have our customers feeling confident about a purchase before any sort of commercials are considered. Really, let's get to a point where everyone's confident and happy to take a look at the platform. If there's no further questions, unless Ross, you've got anything to kind of round up. There is one more question, sorry, that's just dropped in. Is this priced per device? I believe the answer is yes on that one.
Yes, yeah, it is. Yeah, so if you take that device out of commission, the license goes back into your license pool, and you can put that onto another device. So it's not tied to a user. So yeah, it's tied to an endpoint essentially.
It's good news for most, I would imagine. Yeah, so Ross, unless there's anything else to kind of round off?
No, I don't think so. So if anyone wants a sort of further discussion, then yeah, we're happy to set up some time to go through that. But yeah, otherwise, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. All right, thank you everyone. Have a good rest of your day. Cheers.
Thanks everybody. Bye bye.